Joining us for a look at the escalation in this corner of the former Soviet Union are Mark Jacobson, Senior Transatlantic Fellow at the German Marshall Fund, Anna Vassilieva of the Monterey Institute of International Studies, and Andrij Dobriansky, Executive Board Member for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Mark Jacobson, we opened with video images from eastern Ukraine of people taking over city halls and police facilities and so on. Who are those people?
Well, it's going to be a mix of people. The Russians have learned that military confrontation is not best carried out directly. So what I suspect you have there is a mix of Russian intelligence operatives, special forces who are in there agitating Ukrainians, pushing them to demonstrate against their government, and creating this illusion of illegitimacy and illusion of chaos in eastern Ukraine.
Anna Vassilieva, how do you answer that same question? When you see those pictures coming from Kharkiv and places like that, who are those people standing outside the city hall?
Well, first and foremost, they're Ukrainian citizens. And I really believe that if we were to change the discourse a bit linguistically and stop calling those people terrorists, as the government in Kiev does, or separatists, and just look at them as Ukrainian citizens who are dissatisfied for a number of reasons, we could be much more constructive in trying to influence this crisis.
So, Andrij Dobriansky, you just heard Anna there suggest that perhaps the government in Kiev hasn't been doing everything it could to tamp down some of those obvious demonstrations of discontent in the eastern part of the country. Is that a fair point?
Are you referring to the government that was put in place after a revolution in an interim manner and has only been around for 7 weeks after a national revolution? I think we're asking a little bit much for that government to not only deal with the massive financial crisis that it's dealing with, having survived the most corrupt, financially corrupt administration in probably the history of the world, unless you compare it to some African countries in the 90s. And not only that, but now you have a Russian invasion, this silent blitzkrieg that it took over Crimea, which is now occupied, and now taking over the east. These are absolutely, I agree with the sentiment that these are Russian special forces there, Russian military personnel. We've seen that with our citizen journalists documenting these people who have been seen not only on the ground in Crimea, but their pictures even popped up on the ground in Georgia in 2008. So amongst them, you have mixed in not only people who are native to the area, but also these tourists that we're calling them, people who've been advertised on the internet in Russia, who wants to come in and help take over Donetsk and the Donbass, and they're being paid a small amount of money to hop on a bus, a van, cross the border, and they'll be shipped from one protest to another.
But Andrij, wouldn't they be kind of on their own, isolated, if you will, if there wasn't some popular sentiment in those places that sustains what they're trying to do? Even if there are Russians mixed in there, provocateurs, wouldn't it be harder to sustain that kind of thing if there was no popular sentiment in that part of the country of alienation from Kiev?
I wouldn't say it's a popular sentiment. I would say that there are sentiments like that, and these are sentiments that have been bred by years and years of infiltration by the GRU, the Russian military intelligence, as well as the Russian security services. We know through organizations like Yanukovych Leaks, which is going through the former president's compound, going through all of his documents, that there have been agents in place since the beginning of the Yanukovych regime to disseminate disinformation and also make sure that there isn't a strong leadership. We haven't had a strong opposition in the country for a reason for the last 5 years, and that's because of a concerted effort by our neighbors to the west.
Anna Vassilieva, you heard Mark. A referendum were to move ahead, which is the stated wish of some of these crowds in the eastern part of the country. Are there certain sectors, certain cities, certain regions that are more vulnerable, where the revanchist sentiment, the orientation toward Russia is stronger than other places?
Well, to begin with, you can only have a referendum for breaking up the republic by having the entire republic vote on it, so it would have to be an all-Ukrainian referendum. Secondly, we've had polling done just recently. Gallup did a poll that the International Republic Institute released polling people across Ukraine, including the south and the east, as well as the National Democratic Institute, that is showing upwards of 70% people across the entire Ukraine are staying with the motherland. That's their motherland. They are Ukrainians. The sentiment that's being expressed on television is a very small population.
Andrij Dobriansky, executive board member for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. And today, Andrij, the EU announced more sanctions on members of the ruling circles in Moscow, named more people on the list of those who are having assets frozen, their movements made more difficult. Is this the kind of pressure that's actually going to work?
As far as sanctions go, these are things that could have been done weeks ago in the first round. They're really non-consequential. The United States released a third round yesterday that named a whole slew of Crimean politicians. It's laughable that this would actually affect what's going on over in Ukraine. It's a serious humanitarian disaster that's going on over there. There are people in Crimea who have HIV, AIDS, who will not have their antiretrovirals shipped to the clinics there for months. That's a death sentence. There are people being beaten and targeted as ethnic minorities who are not Russian. There was a child who was 14 years old who was beaten because he was speaking the wrong language. This is very serious situation over there, and what's happening is Ukraine is being erased from the map bit by bit, and the West has not responded in the way that Ukrainians thought that it would when they marched in the streets in Kyiv. Ukrainians thought that the West would uphold its territorial integrity because it gave up the third largest arsenal of nuclear warheads, and that promise has gone unanswered.
Anna Vasilyev.